Okay, it's 6 o'clock, which is weird because we're actually getting started early for a change.
Thankfully.
And I'm not going to go any further into this. I'll actually talk about it later in the week, but I do want to be one of the first people to say congratulations to Eric Young for winning the World Heavyweight title last night. That's so awesome. So, I just wanted to throw that out there. We've got 6 movies today. And AJ himself told me face-to-face the other day that we were trying to only do 5, unless it was a catch-up after I come back from Florida, of course. So, this isn't a catch-up. We're just getting really lucky with movies this year. And a lot of movies we really want to tell you guys about, so. We'll start with the movies that you probably have either already seen or thinking about seeing.
The wide releases.
All the wide releases of the week. And then we're going to go into 3 other releases.
The limited releases.
That are limited for this week. And either have already been released or will be released in the next week or so.
I think Only Lovers Left Alive might have been last week.
Okay.
But the other 2 are this week, I'm pretty sure.
Alrighty.
And I'm drawing a blank on them. But yes, I'm pretty sure Afflicted was this week. It's been on VOD. It came out on VOD like last week. But anyway, we're going to start with Draft Day. Just because there's really no particular order to go in.
No, there really isn't.
Draft Day is Ivan Reitman's new movie. I can't even remember what his last one was. But I'm sure this is a lot better than whatever that was. Basically, Kevin Costner is the general manager of the Cleveland Browns.
Yes.
Apparently it was going to be the Buffalo Bills, but something about location or whatever.
Yeah, that's correct. It costs a lot less to film in Cleveland than it did in
Despite the fact that
Buffalo.
we see Buffalo anyway, along with all the other cities.
Ooh, his last one was No Strings Attached.
Oh, before that was My Super Ex-Girlfriend.
Ouch.
Okay, yeah, really improving here.
Oh, absolutely.
I gotta be more like his son, really. This kind of seems like something Jason would do, this movie.
I agree.
So anyway, you're gonna have to bear with me because the last thing in the entire world that I care about is the sport of football.
Yes, me too.
American football, with, the Brits watching. There's, so basically what it is, I didn't know exactly how this process worked until I watched this movie last night.
Yeah.
I'd always heard about it, I'd always seen, like, my brother watching it, but that's all I knew. This is basically it basically takes us in, like, Moneyball and shows us the whole process.
Yes.
The whole movie is basically a combination of Jerry Maguire and Moneyball. So basically, what happens is he's going to be able to have the first pick.
Correct.
But he has to give away that for the next 3 years.
Yeah, his first round draft picks for the next 3 years.
So, and then basically there's a large portion of the movie is the 12 hours building up to the draft itself, which is counted down on constantly by a clock that keeps coming on screen. And we keep going to all the other cities and seeing like how other people are doing theirs and so on. And it's basically centered around Costner's character, who not only is the draft happening, but he's just realized that he's about to have a baby with Jennifer Garner. And his mom is there bugging him about what to do with his dad's ashes and going through the will. And he's fighting with Dennis Leary, who's the coach, about who they're going to choose. And just everything in his life is basically coming to a point when this draft happens.
Yes. It's all coming down on him at once.
And I've been talking before about how much I love this Costner comeback. This is his 3rd movie, and it's April.
Yes.
From this year. On top of the fact he had Man of Steel last year, which is really funny because he has a scene with Tom Welling in this.
Very nice.
And this is a really great Costner showcase.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this is like... I never really liked Tin Cup that much, and I always thought Bull Durham was kind of overrated. And I do like Field of Dreams. I'd say this perfectly fits along his famous roster of sports movies.
I agree.
this is something he would have done, you know, like in the late 80s or early 90s. So, and it's got an interesting style. I think what Reitman was doing here was thinking that this might be... He has to also bring... He has the football fans, and then he also has the non-football fans, like myself.
Yeah.
Where he's basically got to make this process interesting somehow. So he gave the movie a really distinctive style that I've never really seen before. And I guess it's been getting a poor reaction, because a lot of people think it's annoying and just really weird.
Really?
But the thing I liked about it was the fact that it could have just been like some kind of gimmick that was there occasionally and was weird, and then just never came back. But they pretty much stuck with it, and the whole movie is basically in this style. What it is there's a shitload of phone calls. Like when you remember the scenes in Moneyball, it was always we just saw Brad Pitt or Jonah Hill on the phone, and we never saw the other side.
Yeah.
Well, this movie always shows the other side of the phone call.
Literally, it's split screen most of the time.
And what happens with this split screen is there's not really any bounds there.
No.
Because the way the camera tricks are is basically as the scene progresses, whoever is moving, usually it's Costner, will suddenly walk out of his side of the split screen and go to the other side.
Yeah.
Or he'll basically take up most of it. And then but it's an interesting transition because it ends up transitioning into just him in his scene.
Mm.
There's the interesting scenes where this happened a couple of times where there was a split screen here, and this was Costner, and then there was the other split screen that was the other person. And he would walk across theirs, and then another split screen would open up, and then his scene would be on that side.
Oh, so cool.
He would switch sides in mid-split screen. And I can understand, since it's basically constant, how it would be distracting to people and weird. But I like the fact that they stuck with it and it just didn't just happen occasionally, because I think that is when it would be weird and seem out of place.
Absolutely.
But since the whole movie looks like that, it just kind of... I was just able to go with it just as this is what the movie is.
It feels like it's supposed to be there.
Yeah. And it did take me a little bit to get into because pretty much all the terms going into this go completely over my head. But as it progresses, it makes the process easy to follow and it actually builds tension off of it really well.
Yeah.
So you don't, much like you didn't have to be a baseball fan to love Moneyball, you don't have to be a football fan to love this either.
Not at all.
Which is good, because I was starting to worry there for the first half hour. But, apparently they're trying to advertise it as a romantic movie, wrapped up in football. I don't really see it that way. I think football, the whole football and draft plots are very prominent and very center stage.
Yeah.
And I did feel the Garner stuff or the Ellen Burstyn stuff was just like side stuff. I don't think this is really anything wrapped in anything. I think it is how it's advertised. It just happens to have that stuff in it also.
True.
Apparently there's a lot of real players in it.
Yeah.
The only one I recognized was Jim Brown.
I noticed him right off the top too.
Obviously I don't really know their names or faces, so I can't tell you exactly which ones are here. But there's something I can tell you about.
Deion Sanders is in it.
This movie has a massive supporting cast.
Yeah, it does.
About half these people I didn't even know were in it.
Neither did I.
There's most notably is one of the players that Costner has his eye on, who's Chadwick Boseman.
Yep.
Who's basically going to do two things for the rest of his life. Technically three things. He's either going to play athletes,
yeah,
like in this, or he's going to play real people, like in the James Brown
Get
movie.
On Up, which looks really good, by the way.
Or he's going to play a real athlete, like in 42.
42. Yeah. Chadwick Boseman,
but
he's typecast.
He's not here very often, but he is really good when he's here.
He's important, too.
And I think a lot of people are jumping on the idea that he's going to like really go places, because 42 already put in there, and then a lot of people are anticipating the James Brown movie will do wonders for him.
He's going to be like a new Idris Elba.
That, I guess I don't know. That's a weird comparison.
I was going to go with Michael B. Jordan, but I mean...
They're their own thing.
Yeah.
Young black actors can do various things. Well, yeah, like I mentioned, Ellen Burstyn, who is Costner's mom, who surprisingly, normally in movies like this, the mom role is kind of a throwaway.
Mm-hmm.
But she actually had something to do. Those plots kind of, they didn't really do as much for me as like the whole scale thing. But, you know, at least they didn't do something stupid like waste Ellen Burstyn.
Yeah.
So, Sean Combs is there every now and then. Who's basically, what is he, the agent of that player?
He's the Arliss Michaels of this movie.
There's this player that basically everybody wants.
Yes.
And he's like, basically he's the player they're all racing for as the clock winds down. That was Josh Pence.
Yeah, it was.
Who a lot of people know, but they don't realize they know. He was the other Winklevoss that Armie Hammer had his head superimposed on.
Yep.
Sam Elliott has one scene.
I thought it was him, but I was like, my God, he looks smaller now.
The voice is unmistakable, though.
Oh, yeah.
And it is a big reveal, too, because he's facing the other way for a long time, and then he finally turns around.
But you knew it's who it was.
I could tell by his voice, I was like, I'm about to see a mustache in 3, 2, 1. Even in his one scene, he is, like, really good.
Yeah.
Pat Healy, who I just talked about in Cheap Thrills, who also had a really small part in Captain America, has a really good scene also. Basically, they all have one scene that they do well, and then they're gone.
Yeah.
He is the, I believe he's also the GM, but for the Jaguars.
Yeah, he's the young general manager that was going to make the decision.
And he and Costner have this great back and forth scene. It's a nice long scene, too.
It's awesome.
An interestingly dramatic part from Terry Crews.
Yeah, very,
He's
calm down Terry Crews.
He's only there, like, twice, but when he's there, it's like, he's really good, but it's just not the way you normally see him, as of late, anyway.
Considering a lot of people saw the blended trailer this weekend, too, and he's in that, and then you watch this, and it's two completely different situations. And,
of course, may or may not be reprising his role from Eddie, just in a different sport.
Yes!
Frank Langella, who I didn't know was in this.
He didn't ride in on a horse, though, so...
Who's also really good. He's basically the, I guess you could say he's the closest we get to a villain.
I would say so. He's the team owner, basically.
Yeah. And he's basically looking for any excuse to fire Costner, is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
We have Kevin Dunn, who just pops up everywhere. And I looked at you.
Yeah, you did. This was great.
Frank Langella and Kevin Dunn are in the same scene together. I think this is officially the greatest movie that's ever been made.
Very true.
And oddly, we have one scene with Costner's ex-wife, which was a random-ass performance from Rosanna Arquette.
Yeah.
I almost called her Patricia by accident. She's just there and then she's gone. She doesn't even really have to do anything. Except basically play a less dark version of her character in the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
Jennifer Garner is fine. I've never really... The only times I've ever thought she really went above and beyond great was 13 Gone 30 and Juno.
Not even Dallas Buyers Club?
She was... That's the thing. Apart from 13 Gone 30 and Juno, I never hate Jennifer Garner, and I never love her. I'm just in between. I'm like, that was alright.
Alright.
I never dislike her. Hate was a strong word to use there.
Yeah.
I've never disliked Jennifer Garner in a movie. And I really love Dennis Leary. I always love when Dennis Leary's in movies. And he has, there's a couple of really good scenes, especially for Costner. The scene where he confronts Tom Welling and the scene where he has to confront Dennis Leary over something that he said wrong. This is a great role for Costner. I can't say that enough because I'm just so happy that Kevin Costner is back.
Yeah, definitely.
I
love The Intern, too.
Yeah,
He gave me a Michael Stuhlbarg vibe.
I
Big time.
wish I knew his name though. But yeah, he's also. It's basically a running joke whenever he shows up in the movie.
Yeah.
Because he's always at the wrong place at the wrong time. So I think I don't want to jump the gun too much here, but I think people are gonna love this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Like pretty much anybody.
It's pretty much spread out via every type of demographic you could throw out of this movie.
And it's a crowd pleaser in the best way.
Oh, yeah.
It's really effective without being like really corny and cheesy, which I was kind of afraid of.
It tugs at the heartstrings, too, but not in the corny way.
And goes in some unexpected directions.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, I would say, I think it's going to get really good word of mouth, too.
I hope it does. I hope it does really well.
So I guess we'll see what happens. That could just be me hoping, but
I really dug this movie in every way possible.
yeah.
Costner is back with a vengeance.
And Ivan Reitman.
Yes.
So, yes, this is definitely the director of, like, Ghostbusters and Stripes and Twins and Kindergarten Cop, if you want to go there.
Oh, yeah.
So, not so much My Super Ex-Girlfriend or No Strings Attached.
Those are bad movies.
Alright. Our next one is Oculus, which is probably going to be pretty much the opposite of what I just said.
Yeah.
Okay, Oculus is a horror movie of sorts.
Yeah.
It's advertised very much as a horror movie. And yeah, it is a horror movie. But may not exactly be the one people who go into this are looking for.
No, definitely
The people in
not.
the theater seemed really bored. There was a lot of groaning and shifting, and I believe you said you heard a guy snoring.
Yeah, it was me. Thank you. I would say right now, there was this guy that sounded like... I was waiting for it. I was hoping someone would say something. You know, you sit back there in a theater and you just kind of hear the background noise sometimes, and it completely takes you out of the movie. I hate that.
I got a whole story about that with Dolphin Tale, but...
We'll talk about that when we get the sequel later this year.
Yeah, I don't want to go into that right now because I don't want my gag reflex to act up.
Yeah.
Since I'm not really watching trailers this year, I had no idea exactly what was going on here. So, basically, well, before watching it, I mean, as the movie progresses, it obviously you figure it out, but 11 years ago, you had these two siblings who are Kaylee and Tim, I think their names were.
That is correct.
And, of course, they have a father and a mother and a dog. They are the perfect all-American family. And shock surprise, they're moving into a new house.
That's never a good sign. Ever.
And it's even worse sign when one of the main objects they're moving in is this big-ass antique mirror that has been around for apparently years and years and years. Well, eventually the dad goes insane and tortures the mom and kills her. So little Tim retorts and kills the dad and then gets put away in this hospital until he's 21 where he's released. And that's where the movie starts. So his sister picks him up and takes him out to eat and she says, "We're going to do away with this problem now that you are out and we can..." Because it's not necessarily about, let's just destroy the mirror and get over with.
No.
This is... Well, mainly because they have to clear... She wants to clear Tim's name and her dad's name.
Exactly.
Because Tim very much believes that their dad just went Jack Torrance.
Yeah, exactly.
And Kaylee is very much under the impression that whatever supernatural things this mirror brings is what caused everything that happened. And there's phantom people with glowing eyes that just randomly pop up and say, "Look how scary I am."
Yeah.
And do Insidious-like things. Yes, this is one.
I told you, it's the first thing that jumped in my mind. It reminds me of Insidious.
How many posters and trailers exist that say from the producers of Paranormal Activity and Insidious?
Yeah.
Used to be Saw and Insidious, but now they bring...
Well, they're putting their money on the wrong franchise.
Okay. So, and then the movie begins when Kaylee has the whole house set up to prepare for everything that the mirror can do. And this is where it might lose people. There is a very, very lengthy scene of her building up exactly what she's doing is she set up a shitload of cameras.
Yeah.
And she's talking to, I guess, whoever is going to receive these.
Yeah. It was never really... She was basically talking to everybody that's ever doubted anything, all wants to clear...
Yeah, there's a whole dialogue about that, because he says, who are you even talking to?
Same people we're talking to right now.
So, she sets up the cameras and she's setting up the whole thing. And she goes through this really long thing where she does what Samuel L. Jackson did in 1408.
Yep.
She had the whole stack of papers and pictures and crime scene pictures about all the deaths that have happened around in the houses that this mirror has been in.
Correct.
And they vary from very different things. It is literally lifted directly from the scene in the Samuel L. Jackson scene in 1408.
Yeah.
I expected him to just kind of stalk his way on screen and say it's an evil fucking mirror. Despite what you're going to hear from your friends and word of mouth, the movie's not that bad.
No, it's really not.
It could have been a lot worse. It could have been a lot better too.
Yeah, it's kind of stuck in the middle.
It's alright. I will say something immediately that is almost a death sentence for this movie. These two leads that play Kaylee and Tim. Her name is Karen Gillan.
Yeah.
And what's the dude's name?
Brenton Thwaites.
I haven't seen them in anything else, so I can't just flat out say they're fucking terrible actors. But I can say, in Oculus, they are terrible fucking actors. Holy shit.
Oh,
these people fucking suck. But, apart from that, and obviously it's distracting because they're the two leads. Mm-hmm. Generally, it's gonna be a hard time to like a movie if your two leads are fucking horrible.
Correct.
But nevertheless, we have two recognizable faces on the supporting cast. Katie Sackhoff is the mother that basically goes insane, and Rory Cochrane is the dad. Lucas himself.
Yes.
Dad, where's the mirror? It's in Atlantic City, I swear. And they're good. Katie Sackhoff does well doing the tortured mother part that basically... And then she has to be fucking scary towards the end. Mm-hmm. And Rory Cochrane's really good at the... he's been a really underrated actor for, like, ever.
Yeah, agreed.
Like, since Dazed and Confused, I think is when he first showed up. Which was 21 years ago, I think.
Wow.
So, he's really good at doing this progressive... Basically the Jack Torrance thing.
Yeah.
He's normal, and then as things progress, he gets a little creepier, and then by the end...
All bets are off.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going on in his head.
And he's a reliable actor for that, because he can be, likable and normal. Like, he did a movie in right before Empire Records called The Low Life, which is really good, where he's just like an underachieving college kid. And then you have his part in, like, A Scanner Darkly.
Yeah.
Where he's all fucked up. It's kind of a nice combination of that.
Yeah, I can see that.
The thing about this movie that makes it so different is the fact that, despite the fact that it is advertised as this bloody, jumping, scary ghost movie, I mean this, and I don't mean this in a bad way, I'm just saying this is the way the story plays out. For a long time, not a lot is happening.
No.
There's a lot of dead quiet in this movie. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, if you know what you're getting into. Like, if you want something like... Apparently it's been getting... I guess everybody's go-to now is to compare everything to The Conjuring.
Okay.
Not exactly.
No.
It's gonna be a long time before another horror movie comes on top of The Conjuring, but...
Exactly.
This isn't bad.
No.
It's in no way The Conjuring, but it's the closest thing we've gotten since... And it's been less than a year, but it's a shitload of horror movies come out, so... Since then, it's the closest thing we've gotten to a movie that actually tries. Like, it sets this really effective atmosphere.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of the quiet comes in, and the lighting and shit like that. And it's really good. I was very happy with this. This is one of those movies that has the scare before the score.
Mm-hmm.
That's very important to me. Where it's not something's there and then the music chord scares the shit out of you. The thing is there, and when you have time to react to it, and then the music score kicks in. This movie actually does that, so I was very pleased with that. But there are a couple of times where it does that bullshit, like the predictable thing where it's something that's not scary that jumps out and gets you before the scary thing happens. Like there's this kind of ridiculous scene towards the beginning. It's like right at the beginning, where Rory Cochrane is walking through the house in the dark. And the big jump scares that he runs into a couple of boxes. And then as he's walking through the house, like the ghost girl's just there.
Yeah.
With no music cord. The box has got a music cord and the actual ghost didn't. I suppose that's an interesting way to do it.
Well,
and then there's the scene with the three, when she sees the mirror and she's in the room alone with it, and you know something's gonna happen. In the reflections, she sees the three figures that are covered in sheets, white sheets. And of course, in the mirror, one of them moves, and when she turns around, they're not. So she goes over, and she takes one. There's much anticipation building, and it's just a statue, a bust. And then more building, more anticipation, and it's just another bust. And then a dude comes up from behind her and says something, and that's what scares the shit out of her.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. And I do think the whole setup might bother people. Like, there is, it's one of those movies that toys with, reality.
Mm-hmm.
Like, basically the whole setup is they don't know whether what's happening right at this very minute is really happening or not. And that, some people can feel jerked around by that, and I get it.
Yeah.
There are movies that have pissed me off that do that, because basically what it means is it's already in your head that it's always going to be some kind of fake out.
Mm-hmm.
So your mind just sets to that, and you're like, well, and it just bores you, because it's just like, well, I'm not scared by this, because obviously it's going to be a fake out in a second. That didn't bother me, though, because that's basically the whole movie's setup.
Yeah.
So that's basically what you're in for.
But it's not really put over to that fact in the trailer. But
it does a lot of interesting creative things with that, and surprising things. There are a couple of standout scenes involving. There's one standout scene involving a light bulb, and there's one standout scene involving a staple remover.
The light bulb's in the trailer, and that actually was one of the scenes that made me interested in seeing the movie.
Is the staple remover in the trailer?
No. No. They saved that one for the movie.
That reminded me of Black Swan.
Big time.
Yeah. So yeah, it's probably going to get really bad word of mouth from people expecting the traditional PG-13 horror movie thing.
And The Purge is coming out in July. I mean, and it's not a traditional horror film either.
Yeah.
We're not going to have a traditional horror film for a while.
I don't even consider The Purge a horror movie.
No.
Really. It's just it's a thriller. Really.
Quiet Ones is probably the next one after that. This, I think, would be the next one.
The Purge is only as much of a horror movie as Straw Dog is.
I agree with that.
I don't know, the masks are pretty creepy.
Yes.
And the swing. But, anyway, so yeah, I would say to check Oculus out if you like those atmospheric horror movies that are more old-fashioned 70s-like.
Yeah.
I said, not as good as The Conjuring by any means, but it's the closest thing we've gotten for a while.
Blumhouse has really cornered the market on that lately. The atmospheric horror.
Yeah, they got a really fucking creepy logo, too.
Yeah, they do.
It's like, I almost feel like whenever I see a horror movie by that company and the logo comes on, I already feel like I'm watching the fucking thing.
Yeah, it's really, like, eerie.
So, yeah, you can probably look. I mean, I suppose I can't guarantee that your friends are going to bash it, but I'd say it's pretty likely that the target audience won't like it.
Not at all.
It had more of it fell more in line with, like, indie horror movies.
I agree with that.
Like something Ty West would do.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. if you don't like it, blame the marketing and not the movie itself, I guess.
Yeah.
Our next movie is Rio 2.
This is what happens when we have multiple movies on one video.
What's really funny is what Rio 2 is in between.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go right back into what we were just in a second. I should probably start off by saying I'm not much of a fan of the first Rio. It's okay. I don't hate it, but I don't really care for it either.
I liked it and have my reasons.
So I was whatever. I hadn't seen it since 2011.
I really like Jesse Eisenberg. I always have. So pretty much anything he does, I'm gonna latch on to.
Actually, before we go into Rio 2, let me talk about the fact that
God, you're lazy, DreamWorks.
Stay hard at work, DreamWorks.
Thumbs up.
Okay. Granted, maybe this is bad just because we see every movie that comes out.
Yeah.
And maybe they thought people wouldn't notice. What happens is when you go into Rio 2, obviously, like most anime movies, there's a short before it.
Yeah.
Well, the short before Rio 2, and they make it a big deal. They're like, before Rio 2 starts, we're going to show you a comedy film called Almost Home.
I've never seen it done that way before either. It usually just goes right into it.
So, yeah, because most people are aware DreamWorks. I don't know if you know that or not. You're obviously not too in tune with your audience here. But
Peabody was great, thank you.
Almost Home is a not very funny short about an alien voiced by Steve Martin that goes from planet to planet and is trying to look for a place to stay, and it ends with him going to Earth. And that's it. That's it. That's fucking it.
Yeah.
That is the short before Rio 2. Now, the people who pay attention or, go to movies often will know that this is the exact same short that was in front of Mr. Peabody. Sure.
And it's not just this. It actually says, as everyone knows, I build the movies. It says on the actual title of the movie, Rio 2 - Almost Home.
And here's the thing was...
why?
When it was on front of Mr. Peabody and Sherman, I was thinking, that wasn't... I was going to bring it up in the review, and you know what happened?
There you go.
The reason I didn't talk about it in the Mr. Peabody review is because I fucking forgot about it. Because it's so pointless. And so, what Rio 2 is going to do to make itself a big deal, shock surprise, is to show Almost Home again. Surely they at least had something in the archives if they wanted to repeat themselves.
Yeah. I'm sure the Ice Age crowd would definitely appreciate something like that.
And it's really disappointing. You would think a short with Steve Martin in it would be comedy gold, but
yeah.
This Almost Home is not.
No.
Almost Home made me want to go home.
Yeah, take it home.
I wish I had said that with a straight face, but it's over now.
Yeah.
So Rio 2, where should I start? Because there's like 50,000 goddamn stories happening.
It really is.
We'll start with the, I guess, centerpiece. Obviously, Linda and Tullio are married now, in a throwaway piece of exposition.
Yeah.
And they're living in Rio now. So, they can all be together, and Blue can also be with his people.
Yes.
And Jewel, they can be with their people together, along with their children. Their annoying-ass children. Which obviously they made a sequel to Rio, obviously their kids are going to be involved. Way back in 2011, when the movie ended and they had little kids, I was like, man, if they make a sequel, those kids are going to be annoying as fuck. They didn't disappoint. But, anyway, and one of them's the kid from Looper, by the way, that was hilarious.
Yeah.
Anyway, this review right now is about as coherent as the movie is.
Yep.
Our first story is the fact that it's not enough that they live in Rio now. Jewel wants to quit living like a human. She wants to, stop eating people food and stop, don't have TV or don't have iPods or anything like that. Don't have fanny packs, which is a running joke.
And the wrestlers from the 80s represent.
So she wants to go out into the Amazon jungle and live now.
Don't know why you want to do that. I don't care if you're a bird or not.
Because there is no pleasing this woman, I guess.
Yeah.
So, that's what she wants to do. So Blue, being the passive-aggressive bird that he is, because he's played by Jesse Eisenberg,
Of course.
just goes along with it. And they all end out in the Amazon.
Yeah, Lex Luthor's a real big pushover.
So, anyway, can you imagine if he was in Zuckerberg mode voicing Blue?
That'd have been better. A lot better.
Okay, so...
And not rated G.
Now our second story is the obvious one. Nigel has come back.
Yes.
I don't know how he survived. I was flabbergasted by the end scene in the first movie when he appeared. But, whatever. It's a G-rated movie, Nigel's still alive.
He lost his ability to fly is basically what it was. They actually say that in a piece during the movie.
So, and Jermaine Clement's voicing him again.
Yeah, he is.
The good thing about the Nigel subplot is the fact that Nigel is easily the funniest character in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks to Jermaine, of course. Of course, of all the stories we've got going on here, Nigel's probably in it the least.
Yeah, it's a letdown.
Genius move, writers. Our third story, and the one we've spent the most time on, is... Oh my god, there's 4 stories in this movie. I thought we were done, but never mind, there's 4.
No, there's 4.
The third story out of 4 is the one we have the most center on, which is Jewel, by some weird-ass way of beating the odds, runs into her dad, who's Andy Garcia.
Yeah.
And her mom was Rita Moreno, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Putting 2 Oscar winners in this movie. No, 3. I forgot Anne Hathaway. And basically, it turns into Meet the Parents.
Yeah.
Okay, and then there's a 4th plot involving to put it simply, the Save the Rainforest plot. Oh my god.
Well, there's Will.i.am and Jamie Foxx trying to get the Carnival together. So I guess you could say there's 5 plot points.
There's a lot going on in this movie for the kids that have very short attention spans.
Exactly. This is not a short attention span.
Like
theater.
the music and the colors. Speaking of that, the first movie wasn't really a musical.
No.
It had one song in it that played at the beginning and then the end.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what it was the nominated song. What was its name? It's gonna take too long to figure it out. Something Rio. Is that a song? This is practically a musical.
Yeah, it is.
What happened was they have a whole bunch of numbers with unmemorable songs. The one song they had in the first one was a really good song. That's why it was nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah.
But I don't give a shit about these.
Really?
And here's... Yeah. And this is what happened. Okay. They started adding people to the cast list, like Bruno Mars. When you add Bruno Mars to your cast list, inevitably your movie's going to have more songs in it than it would have if you just cast somebody else.
Correct.
Then we had Les Mis a couple of years ago. Well, about a year and a half ago. And Anne Hathaway won an Oscar basically just for singing a song. And that's when they thought, well, we have another singer in this film. Let's add more songs in it. And by the way, they do have Anne Hathaway sing a song for about 20 seconds. And then the scene goes somewhere else. But regardless, the musical scenes are really well animated and everything, but they're so pointless. And they have nothing to do with anything else. They're just there because they know kids have short attention spans. And it makes the movie a chore to sit through. Because there's so many of them. There are a couple of good musical numbers in the movie. Surprise, surprise, they come from Nigel.
Of course they do.
Because Jermaine is a member of Flight of the Conchords, and Flight of the Conchords is one of the most amazing things to ever happen to the world.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree with that statement.
Now, here are the problems. First off, I want to talk about something that's... I know it's not really I suppose I can't fault the movie too much because it's a G-rated animated movie about fucking birds. This is one of those movies that is strictly for children.
Yeah.
Like, generally you have those movies... Now, granted, this can be a good thing because some movies try to be both and they end up trying way too hard. But then there are those movies that equally balance, you know, parents are going to get dragged to this by their kids, we might as well give the parents something.
Mr. Peabody and German.
The
Lego movie was a big one.
But Rio 2 is one of those movies that kind of just sticks strictly to, it's basically strictly a children's movie, I think.
Yeah.
This will be played, like, in nurseries and daycare centers and shit.
Yeah.
And the parents more or less just kind of have to endure it unless they're Jermaine Clement fans.
Yes.
Yeah, and Nigel has a couple of new sidekicks. There's this poisonous frog that's madly in love with him. Their musical number is basically the musical number from Sweeney Todd where Mrs. Lola talks about how in love with him she is, and he's just kind of there. And he has an anteater friend that doesn't speak. He just does slapstick. I don't even know why the fuck Nigel hired him.
I don't know, but I have a feeling if he did speak, it'd probably be Frank Walker's voice.
That laugh was rolled out because there was a hiccup forced it out. Okay, let's talk about some of these plots.
Alright.
And they're so disproportionate, which makes it a real problem. Let's talk about this Meet the Parents plot.
Okay.
Okay, you have the dad voiced by Andy Garcia, who's basically the tough dad who is very hard to impress. And he's very protective. So naturally there's going to be a point in time where Blue tries to impress him and fails and only makes him like him less. But not to worry because he'll win him back over doing something fantastic that saves the day at the end.
Of course.
Spoiler alert. So, here's the problem. When you're making an animated movie, obviously the options are very wide. Because your setting is birds in the Amazon jungle. Of all different species. You could do anything. If you have a creative force, you could do a number of things here. They take every single cliche of the son-in-law trying to impress father-in-law story that there is. And that's what they choose to put in the middle of this movie, of all things. And they went through the trouble of bringing that story in when there's already plenty of other stories going on to fill this movie.
And the kids are going to tune out during it anyway.
There is actually a scene that comes from out of nowhere. Out of fucking nowhere. Where there is a big soccer game.
Yeah.
Between the two different birds. I don't remember exactly their names, but it's the blue ones and the red ones. And basically the thing is, oh, I'm gonna win the game and I'm gonna impress him. And he's like, nope, I'm sending in the weakling, and the weakling like dies immediately. So he's like, alright, I finally get to go in. And he's like, okay, go in. And it's like, oh, it's his big moment. Is he gonna humiliate himself? And it's as if this Meet the Parents storyline was not unoriginal enough. The outcome of this soccer game rips off an episode of Full House.
Yeah.
Do you remember the episode? I'm sure it's been done on a shitload of things. The Big Green, I think, did it.
Yeah, the Big Green did it.
You remember the Full House episode where Michelle was going to save the day, and she was going to, like, finally be noticed and score the winning goal, and it was in her own fucking goal, and she humiliated herself, and they lost.
Yep.
That's what Rio 2 does.
Yeah, it is.
Great going. The writers on this should have been fired a long time ago. Long before the movie hit the screen. Let alone before it was even finished being written. But whatever. The Save the Trees thing kind of also comes from out of nowhere. Because they introduced this Richard Attenborough-esque guy that Miguel Ferrer voices for some reason.
Yeah.
He's basically the he smokes a cigar. No, he has a lollipop because he can't have a cigar because it's a G-rated movie.
He's Kojak.
And he's basically playing Giovanni Ribisi in Avatar. So, he wants all the trees cut down just because... Basically because this movie is a sequel to Joe, which we're going to get to later. And he's introduced kind of in the middle of the movie, and then that's not important until the very end when we have to have a standoff.
Yeah.
Which also reminded me a lot of this is probably random as fuck. And I haven't even seen this movie in like a decade, but this is what I was thinking of. This movie's ending reminded me a lot of the ending of the Dr. Dolittle sequel. Going with Jeffrey Jones and Kevin Pollak.
Yeah.
Oh my god. So, there's really no reason for this movie to exist.
And I don't think there'll be a third one.
And there is this, I did like the Poisonous Frog character too.
Yeah.
And there is a hilarious scene in the middle of the movie involving a talent show.
Mm-hmm.
Which is part of the scene where the first teaser trailer, where Clara came out and sang Memory from Cats. That's part of a whole talent show they got going on. That whole scene is hilarious, and should have been in a different, funnier, better written movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the problem. Like only half. It's not even funny half the time, which is a real downfall to a movie like this. And of course, going back to the Meet the Parents plot, there's a part I completely forgot about. If you're wondering what Bruno Mars does for some reason, obviously, in every single Meet the Parents plot, you've got to have the threat.
Yep.
That's either an ex-boyfriend or somebody that has always wanted the girlfriend. Or wife in this case. So, I don't know how these birds get married, but whatever. That's who Bruno Mars is. He's the same bird, but he's got like long hair. And he does his Bruno Mars thing. I just don't understand how an animated movie like this, of all things, can be recycling cliched movies, cliched plot points from live-action movies that aren't even that good. That's not a bash at Meet the Parents, it's a bash at Meet the Parents' rip-offs.
Yeah.
Like People's. There is one, I guess, adult reference, or hidden I wouldn't even call it adult reference, because it's a very inside joke. And this was in the first one too, but I'd never even thought about it until it came up in this one, and I was like, of course. Obviously, Linda, Tullio, and Blue are from Minnesota. And their name is Gunderson.
Yeah, it is.
I don't even know how that just didn't even register with me the first time when I saw the first one, but it only took one mention of it in this one, and I was like, what the fuck? Why reference Fargo in Rio? So, whatever. This movie doesn't need to exist. Did I miss anything?
Leslie Mann and the great Rodrigo Santoro.
Yeah, I love Leslie Mann, obviously. And of course Rodrigo Santoro is the man.
Yeah, he is.
Linda and Tullio are pretty much wasted here.
Yeah, they're kind of background characters.
They're only there to be a part of the we're gonna cut down the trees plot.
The Ferngully plot.
Yeah. So that's pretty much Rio 2. Your kids are gonna want to see it, and God help you. It's not that bad when you're actually watching it. But
yeah.
Looking back on it now, I realize they were really lazy making that movie.
Agreed.
I mean, I know when you make sequels based on the fact of how much money your first one made, generally the writing and everything is pretty lazy. Yeah, this takes that to a level all its own. So yeah. Now going completely back off track, there is a movie that's apparently been really taking off in popularity because of a VOD release. And it got a limited release. Limited release in theaters either this week or last week, I can't remember which. This movie is a horror movie called Afflicted. Take a wild guess at the genre that Afflicted is. I will give you a hint. Afflicted's tagline is caught period, captured period on film.
What?
Have you not had enough of found footage movies yet? Because here's a brand new one for you, not the same one.
I didn't think it was.
Yes, there is a guy called Jason Lee in this movie. Okay, here's what Afflicted is. A lot of people have already seen it and are talking about it. And apparently it's getting a really good reaction. In case you don't know, well, first off, apparently a lot of people suggest you go into this as blind as you can.
Mm.
So, I'm gonna try to do that. I'll basically give you the plot. I won't go into, like, the spoilery stuff. Because there's a certain word you can use for what is happening in this movie. But I don't know if that's a spoiler or not. Or a surprise to people. Because I don't know if it's being advertised that way. But, having said that, the plot is basically about these two friends who are Derek and Cliff. And it's worth noting that everybody in this movie, except for the minor characters, it's their real name. Except, hilariously enough, for Cliff. Well, I can't remember which way it is, but the actor's name and the character's name, one has one F and one has two. But all the other names match exactly. Yeah, the real guy has one F, the character has two. And everybody else goes by their actual real name. Fine. Whatever. Basically, Derek has a problem in his brain. Something involving, like, vessels being intertwined or something, and if it ruptures, he'll either be crippled or die. So, he's always wanted to go with, basically go out and do a all-around-the-world travel blog for a year. And basically make the most insanely awesome travel blog there's ever been.
Sounds like Turistas.
It sounds like a lot of movies.
Yeah.
So that's the plan. But naturally, when you leave the country in horror movies, you know, hostile Turistas, you're gonna probably lose internal organs.
At least. Lose something.
And they're gonna do this for a year. These guys that are in it are also the writers and directors.
So it's like Catfish.
Yeah, something like that. Only this is obviously fictional.
Yeah.
Had it been back in the late 90s or in the Cannibal Holocaust days, I'm sure people would have bought it, but obviously, you know, it's a genre now.
Yeah.
Like, the people that had to actually go on trial after Cannibal Holocaust was made, because they actually thought the camera crew just watched people get murdered.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and here's the weird thing. It's getting a lot of comparisons to Chronicle.
Give me another reason not to watch it.
Just hold on. The weird, bizarre thing about this movie is obviously it's this hardcore horror movie.
Okay.
But the first part of it, like after they go through the whole "my brain's in trouble" thing, and this is the history of our great friendship, it starts off like a comedy. Like, if I seriously went into this blind, I would have thought it was something like Fanboys, where he was like, "Man, I've got like vessels going wrong in my brain. I think we should just go around the world together." And it was going to be some wacky adventure comedy.
Interesting.
That's the way it plays out. If I didn't know already going in, if I hadn't seen that poster going in, I would have never guessed what kind of movie it was at first. So basically, they go out and then they go to the bar, and it's like the first segment of VHS. They go to the bar, they meet a strange woman, and one of them starts to make out with her, and it's like, oh yeah, she's gonna go back into his room with him, and they're gonna, you know, do stuff that we can't show on camera because... but naturally, they go in, and then something goes horribly wrong, and he's unconscious, and he's got, like, a wound on him that she left. Like, she attacked him, and, like, he's got scratches on him. And she's nowhere to be found. So he's like, fuck man, that was fucked up. And they just go about their trip. And then disgusting shit starts happening for cringe value. And he starts projectile vomiting, he starts pulling stuff out of his eyes. And then suddenly it turns into Chronicle and he has superpowers and they decide they want to play with that. Like, he can break through rock walls, he can bust through boulders, he can lift heavy cars, he can run faster than vehicles. And they just do the thing where they have fun. Basically making their own Jackass movie, like the beginning of Chronicle. And then the movie goes dark. And it's something like this. I would have expected something. Barry Levinson did this movie a couple years ago called The Bay, which I hated. But it was basically, it wasn't so much found footage so much as it was like research and news footage of this outbreak happening. This isn't an outbreak movie though, per se, but now that I basically told you the plot and how it starts off, I really, really despised 3/4 of this movie.
Wow.
And then the last fourth of it started to pick up. So I'll basically, without giving anything away, go through this. Try not to give anything away. Or anything too major, I mean. I won't just intentionally say, hey, this happens. No. This, for the longest time I was, even though I shouldn't be by now, I was baffled by the reaction it was getting, because everybody in the entire world that saw it was talking about how original it was. Mm-hmm. Apparently it won like a lot of shit at film festivals. And like I said, was getting a huge reaction on VOD. For a long time, there's not an original bone in this movie's fucking body. And I don't know where that was coming from. Because it starts off with the whole, we get the paranormal activity shit where it's counting down like, day 19 and day 23 and all that shit. There are the scenes where, one of them, like, it starts off like it's going to be a legitimate scare scene, and it's just one scaring the other. Like I said, obviously the cringe stuff, like the thing in the eye reminded me of the Paranormal Activity movie at the beginning of this year where he like had to pull the string out of his eye. Mm. There's shit like that. That are just there for cringe factor and don't really mean anything. The thing where they take the camera everywhere to do every tedious thing, and there's always some lame excuse for them to have the camera with them. Where it gets to the point, like, I said I was going to keep the cameras rolling, I'm going to keep the cameras rolling. Even if they're doing, like, little tedious little tasks. There's the scenes where a scene happens, and then we have to watch a character rewatch the footage we just watched. I go through the same shit every found footage movie we talk about. Yep. There's always a scene where somebody says, turn the camera off, you can't have the camera here. And he says, okay, and he doesn't turn the camera off. Obviously there's going to be scenes where everything's quiet and we see one of the characters like this, and then suddenly they roar and they leap at the camera and we just hear, oh shit, as the camera is moving in Paul Greengrass style. Yeah. Yes. This is the movie everybody's talking about how original it is. Oh. And of course you have those scenes where every single found footage movie, it started with Blair Witch and it has never ever been killed. It will live forever. If you're in a found footage movie, there have to be long periods of time where you walk around in the dark saying a character's name over and over and over and over again. Yeah. In this case, it's Derek. There are long scenes of Cliff walking around in the dark going, Derek! Derek! And he's never hearing anything, so he just keeps on screaming, Derek! Like he's suddenly just gonna go, dude, I'm right here. I'm waiting for that to happen soon.
I was asleep.
Yeah, look into that Marlon Wayans.
Yeah, please do.
Yes. That is very,
original. Extremely original.
I can't remember the guy's name. I can't remember which one of them went missing in Blair Witch. Micah in Paranormal Activity comes to mind. How many times have we heard her scream his name?
You could have played a drinking game, honestly. I know a lot of people that did.
And there's a while there where the this actually picks up later, but there's a while there where the performances get worse as they go too. At one point, Derek is kind of like Carrie was at the end of Saw.
Ooh.
I'm going to get help. He's doing that shit.
Will Ferrell and Austin Powers.
Yeah.
That's more over the top.
That's it. There are a couple of effective scare scenes where obviously they're ruined by the camera, but when they first happen, they're good. And obviously he has to start treating a bloodlust. So of course we have to have scenes of him like ravaging. This happened in fucking Devil's Due. The most recent found footage movie. They're already repeating themselves one right after the fucking other. There's scenes of him taking raw meat and just, and then there's, he starts doing live things. He almost decides on a dog, but instead decides on a pig. Which brings us to more projectile vomiting, which I fucking love so much. If you know me personally, you know why.
Yep.
And there's even like a... Dude, just these ridiculous things, like the scene with the pig, okay? Obviously Cliff's the one holding the camera, and Derek's the one devouring this pig. Obviously the reason the camera is rolling is so he can have every possible piece of footage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, apparently suddenly found footage turns into first-person point of view, because when Derek starts to devour the pig, you would think the reason the camera is rolling is because they want this on camera, right? Well, what happens when Derek starts eating is Cliff gets disgusted and turns away, and when he turns away, the camera turns with him, and we're just fucking looking at grass. Completely defeating the purpose of the whole let's take the camera with us everywhere thing. Now, I guess you could say that's a character mistake and not a movie mistake, but I was really hating the movie by this point, so I'm going to call it a movie mistake. Okay. Now, a little over halfway into the movie, something happens. And the movie goes in a different direction, kind of. And this is when it started to get better. Because normally found footage movies, they basically do their thing and then they just end. They end on something coming towards the camera and the camera guy says, "Oh shit," and the camera turns over.
Yeah.
And then it just ends. This movie actually comes to a point where it actually has to go in a certain direction. This movie actually tries to set out and solve the problem of its conflict, which is redundant, but the movie actually is forced to actually go somewhere.
Okay.
As opposed to just end when everybody dies. And it actually, they get some really great shots out of it too. Like I was saying, they actually get this idea to, we don't really see how, but he basically has a way of putting attaching the camera to him so he doesn't have to hold on to it. So then it basically does turn into, it's like seeing everything from his first person point of view. And when he starts obviously when they're doing the Chronicle jackass shit at the beginning, we learn that he can fly.
Okay.
Which is really awesome from the first person perspective. So, it makes a really good scene. There's a chase scene also that's really effective, especially from that point of view. And that's when it actually starts to work. But then again, we're an hour into the movie by this point.
Ooh.
So, and it's only like an hour 20 or something. And yeah, even though it did get a lot better, there's still a shitload of stuff the Chronicle did better. Much better. So, and it actually uses the previous events of the movie effectively. It all actually has to come together. So I guess that's where you can kind of say where it's original.
Mm-hmm.
It's taking the shitty found footage idea and doing something good with it. I guess when you do something good with found footage, it's considered original now. That's how bad it is.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because there have been, 2 good found footage movies with Chronicle and Blair Witch. The Last Exorcism.
Cloverfield.
Oh, yeah. Okay, fine. Maybe there were better ones that I just don't remember.
And VHS.
Okay, fine. But the ratio
Yes.
is
It's really
Not-
lopsided.
not in its favor.
Very lopsided.
And that's not even to go into all of these straight-to-DVD ones I've never seen or heard of.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about those.
So, I guess it just depends on who you are if you're going to like this or not. And there's also an after-credit scene that's actually worth staying for. So, that's... Yeah, I don't think I said too much.
One thing came to mind, but I think it'll be glossed over, so it'll be fine. You're talking about, you use a certain buzzword in movies, and it may have been saying too much, but I don't know. The word bloodlust only goes a couple different directions.
Yeah. Or
That's the only thing, that's what I mean. It could go a certain direction, or certain directions.
There it is. Way to go.
But that doesn't mean it's only one thing. There's multiple things it could mean.
I'm just being careful. I think people probably know what it is.
Probably.
That
That would want to genuinely see it.
and if not, I'm sure they've heard about it by now.
Yeah.
Because it's like the bee's knees right now. All right. Our next movie is a movie that was at TIFF and got a really good reaction, and I think it was at Sundance this year, but I'm not sure. This is David Gordon Green's new movie Joe, starring Nicolas Cage and Ty Sheridan. Ty Sheridan from The Tree of Life and Mud. And this is David Gordon Green basically trying as hard as he can to make a comeback with it. He had this and Prince Avalanche after Your Highness and the Sitter. And he's back to more, this is the guy that made Snow Angels.
Mm-hmm.
So, and everybody was buzzing about the fact that it's basically, obviously I've said many times how much I love Nicolas Cage no matter what. But this is one of he's basically going back into full dramatic form.
Mm-hmm.
And not necessarily doing his Cage thing. And basically the plot, it's a little difficult to say what the plot of Joe is. It's a lot like Mud, and I think it is like Mud as far as not just the fact that Ty Sheridan is the kid, but and the fact that it's Ty Sheridan meets a guy who's trying to redeem himself in life. He's seeking redemption. It's comparable to Mud in a few ways, more than a few ways I would say. But basically the main plot is Joe has his dog and a girlfriend, and he basically works as a guy that they always have obscure jobs in David Gordon Green movies, and this is they poison trees so that they can be. I couldn't quite figure out what he was talking about, but basically they inject poison into trees and kill them, and then that's what to do for whatever the people that come in do what they need to do.
Okay.
And Ty Sheridan is a kid who's basically abused by his dad, who is a total and complete drunk. His dad is basically imagine a Chris Christopherson were crazy as hell.
Wow.
It's not Chris Christopherson, but so, and he has to take care of his sister and his mom. And his mom basically kind of doesn't really do anything. His dad basically walks all over her and does his drunk thing, and the only way they can get money is if he works.
Okay.
So he goes to Joe, and Joe gives him a job. And then there's a side plot involving this villain character named Willie Russell. That's hyphenated, by the way. And Willie Russell is this really creepy character. The guy that plays him reminds me of Peter Sarsgaard.
Interesting.
And he's basically a guy, we never actually see this, but the story is he was slapped by Joe in a bar and humiliated in front of everybody. So he's basically seeking revenge for that. And his line throughout the movie is he's got this scar on his face, and his, he always points to this happens 3 times, he points to the scar, and to scare people he says, I went through a windshield at 4 a.m. and I don't give a fuck. And he repeats this line.
That's awesome.
And that's basically his weird villainy catchphrase. And it's basically one of those really subdued movies where it's more about authenticity and just the way these people live their lives. And a story gradually forms from watching them. I'm going to go ahead and say this now. Like I said, this may just be... I saw this movie this morning. So this may just be my shell-shocked reaction to it. But as of right now, unless this changes... if I see it again, or whether it improves in my mind or not. Joe, let me say this. If you've been watching these videos or not, I can just tell you this. The Iceman was my favorite movie of 2013, last year.
Yes.
Joe is probably almost as good as the Iceman. Which means we are in April of 2014, and with Joe... 2014 may already be 2013. This movie is indescribably great. Let me just go into it. Let me start off with Cage. The interesting thing about it is, first and foremost, this movie does the impossible. When you see Nicolas Cage in a movie, like I said, even though I love him no matter what he does, he's always Nicolas Cage, being crazy-ass Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
Very rarely does he fall into a character like he did Charlie and Donald Kaufman.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen very often for him. He's always Cage, and we love Cage, so that doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Playing this subdued character... Joe as a character is so well defined, and Cage is so fucking good playing him. I saw Joe and not Nicolas Cage most of the time.
Nice.
Which is a really, really hard thing to do, but it really worked. There's a couple of scenes where he's Cage-like. There's this ongoing thing with this dog, where he's talking about. He goes to this woman's house and there's a dog there that's always barking at him, and it's this like ferocious dog. And he says, "I thought I told you whenever I come over here to lock that asshole up." And he's just like, "Is that asshole dog like locked up now? Don't let that asshole near me." And then later on they talk about how she says, "Don't worry, I know you hate dogs." And he's like, "I don't hate dogs, I love dogs, I just hate that asshole."
That's awesome.
But other than that, he very much falls into the character. And Joe becomes somebody who is not Nicolas Cage. And that makes the movie really, really easy to be immersed in. And it's very authentic with really great performances, and it's really well made. The great performances, the great thing about Ty Sheridan is I didn't really see the big deal with him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people loved him in Mud and thought he was one of the best, like, performances of the year for that movie. But here I thought he really stood out, but I think it's mainly the, I don't know if I've warmed up to him or if it's the character, but the character is really, really well written, especially with, like, those little details of, like, you know when you meet those kids in real life, and basically their attitude, you can basically tell they directly lifted from watching their parents. He's basically a kid like that, and that's the way his character is written, like, just the way he talks and the way he acts, you just can imagine him like seeing a parent say or do something and then just mimicking it, and that's how he grew up into the character that he is. And he's only 15.
Wow.
But naturally you always have that mature young character where they have a drunk dad, so they have to take care of their mother and sister, etc. Jennifer Lawrence and Winter's Bone, basically.
Yeah.
And then you have this is a really interesting story here. The dad is played to perfection by a guy named Gary Poulter.
Okay.
Gary Poulter is not an actor. Gary Poulter was a homeless man that David Gordon Green found and cast in the movie.
Wow.
And apparently that didn't change anything because like 2 months after they were done filming, he was like found dead in the streets or something.
Oh, wow.
And he is amazing and fucking scary as hell. And it's a great performance. And obviously, we will never know if the guy was really like that or not, but within the confines of the movie, it's really, really effective. And this is one of those movies where it's like, you don't really know. I have so much trouble talking about movies, describing why I love the movies that I love. But I'm doing my best. It's another one of those movies where it's fairly calm until you get to those really big dramatic moments. But this is one of those movies where it'll be calm and everything will be fine, and then there'll be a sudden burst of violence. Like whether it be somebody getting shot at or somebody getting beaten to death. And it just seems to come from out of nowhere, but not in like an out of place way, but in like a surprising way that really snaps you into the movie and really builds tension with it. And also part of that, I can't help but wonder if a lot of it was improv as far as dialogue. It's one of those movies that has a lot of scenes, like the Woody Allen scenes, where all the dialogue is overlapping. It felt real enough to where it feels like a lot of it was probably improv, which really helps. I didn't really feel like I was actually watching a movie. And like I said, I can't praise Cage enough. How often can you watch a movie starring Nicolas Cage in the leading role and say you didn't feel like you were watching a movie, or for that matter, Nicolas Cage himself? The less I can describe how much I love a movie, the more I obviously love it. And that's pretty much the only thing I can say with this review.
Yeah.
I seriously cannot recommend this movie enough. If you can get anywhere near it at all. Like I said, it's probably almost as good as anything that came out last year. Entirely. So, track this down as soon as you possibly can. I don't know exactly how limited the release is, but I imagine it might be difficult to find for a while, but like when a DVD release happens or something,
yeah,
please see it as soon as possible. Our last movie is a movie that went to Cannes last year, and is finally out now. I think it's wide release or limited release. Released at all is this week or last week. It's this week. Okay, good.
Today.
We're right on time. We're talking about Only Lovers Left Alive, which is Jim Jarmusch's vampire movie. Starring Tom Hiddleston and Tilda Swinton in the perfect casting choice. Everybody in this movie is perfectly cast. You also have, okay, basically what the plot is Tom Hiddleston and Tilda Swinton are vampires who have been married for like hundreds and hundreds of years. So much so that they can live in different countries for long periods of time, and then they basically eventually just find their way back to each other. And that's all the movie is. But here's the thing, and their names are Adam and Eve. That's, yeah, Jarmusch not being all that subtle. But here's the interesting thing about Only Lovers Left Alive is it's not your typical vampire movie, obviously. And here's the thing. If you're aware of Jarmusch's movies, you know that his movies are typically about laid-back characters that do laid-back things.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much all the movies are. Basically all dialogue movies. Basically what Only Lovers Left Alive is a story about hipster vampires. And here's the thing, here's the funny thing about it. This movie has a dark sense of humor too, so I imagine this is all intentional. Vampires are the greatest hipsters of all time because they have literally seen and done everything. Nothing is new to them.
That's a good point.
So, that's basically what happens is, not a whole lot happens in this movie, but that's the point because when you're a vampire who has been alive for centuries, you have nothing left to do except just hang out.
Wander the earth.
You have literally done everything there is to do in life. You just have to hang out and listen to music and play music. He's a musician.
Nice.
Tom Hiddleston's hair, by the way, fits the goth, emo, musician personality perfectly. His face does, too. Nothing against him. But, and basically, and we have some supporting players here. Adam has a supplier of just anything. Obviously, he doesn't want to go out into the real world or anything.
Yeah.
So he has a supplier played by Anton Yelchin who basically gets everything for him. And he is human and he doesn't know exactly what Adam is. And the interesting thing about this movie is it is the humans that the vampires refer to as zombies.
Nice.
And then you have another interesting character. Here's the problem, though. I have flashbacks
Uh-oh.
of a movie I talked about here a long time ago called Kiss of the Damned.
Yeah.
The middle of Only Lovers Left Alive is the same plot as Kiss of the Damned. You have them, and then you have Tilda Swinton has an out-of-control vampire sister that comes to visit them. And she ends up getting out of control. And she is Mia Wasikowska. Did I mention that already?
No.
Okay.
You're good.
Who I'm liking more and more the more movies she's in.
Mm.
Like, when I saw her in Alice, I was like, who the fuck is this? I don't like this person. She is boring. But the more she's in movies like Stoker and this... Okay, she's moving. She's getting there. I was going to use Albert Nobbs, and then I thought, wait, she wasn't very good at Albert Nobbs.
The kids are alright.
Yeah, she was good at that. She basically gets to play something unlike she's done before here, where she gets to play the wild and out-of-control character. And she does it really well. And basically they hang out and they have, obviously they have to have a supply. Tilda Swinton is supplied by a vampire played by John Hurt. And John Hurt is basically the vampire that wrote all of Shakespeare's plays and didn't get credit for them.
Anonymous?
Yeah. And he's still alive today to talk about it. Because they, he has what's called the good stuff, which is basically, not only is it blood that vampires can drink to survive, but it basically also gets them high. And then Adam has blood popsicles in his freezer. And they basically have to live off this supply for a while. And basically it's just a love story about them. These characters just kind of come and go throughout the movie, but the whole center of the movie is them and their love story. Like she, there's a point in time in the movie where she's looking at a picture from like the 1800s, and she's like, oh, that was our third wedding. And,
sounds like Gomez and Morticia a little bit.
and obviously Jarmusch takes some liberties with the vampire genre, like they were talking about how some of it's just like myths, like Santa Claus. Like when Mia Wasikowska just kind of bursts into the apartment, and she's like, you do know that it's bad luck to enter a living space without being invited. And she just shrugs and says, let me guess, and you're still afraid of garlic. And then they do the, obviously they play with the time thing, like, there's a point in time where Mia Wasikowska gets out of control and talks about sucking the blood from humans. And Tilda Swinton's response is a panicked, you do realize this is the 21st century, come on. They're basically above, being the hipster vampires that they are above and beyond drinking straight from humans. Like, she gets her supply from John Hurt, and Adam knows a doctor played by Jeffrey Wright who supplies him with blood from a hospital. So they don't want, they prefer not to feast on humans. Because, like she said, like, there's even a scene where, I love this. They're basically, watching a couple make out.
Mm-hmm.
And, her hipster response to this is, oh, that is so 15th century. it seems like a gimmick, but it's not overused or anything. And the great thing is, a lot of Jarmusch's movies involve just discussion about, like, artsy shit, basically.
Mm.
And it's interesting that I think he's well aware of that, because the spin that this movie puts on that is they make references to, like, Tesla and Shakespeare and, like, composers and stuff like that. When they make references to them, it's not just, oh, I know this person, I know their material. It's somebody from, like, the 15th century that they hung out with. Like, when he says, he's talking about something about electricity, and he says Tesla had a light bulb in the 1800s, and he didn't even need, electricity. Like, he didn't even need a cord or anything. He's not just referencing Tesla because he's smart and knows about history. He's referencing Tesla because he was there when Tesla had the light bulb that needed no other electricity. So, yeah, it works really well as a black comedy, as well as, I've actually heard that, I guess a lot of people are saying this is his most accessible movie.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that. I'd say Dead Man, Ghost Dog, and Broken Flowers are all more accessible than this. And it's definitely, if you're not a fan of Jarmusch movies, this is not going to change your mind. It's basically just a really clever movie about how most vampire movies tend to glorify the life, like The Lost Boys, where it's, you're going to live forever, you're going to look young forever. This movie shows that eventually that would get really dull and you'd have nothing else to do. Because it basically says that they're more or less, in the area that they're pretty much the only ones left of their kind. And they're basically, they don't really say this, I guess they're becoming extinct. So,
it's interesting to think things that way.
Yeah, Jarmusch has a whole lot of interesting, original ideas to do with this. And, I really liked it. I don't think it's for everybody. I'm sure it's not for everybody, much like Jarmusch's filmography. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. I think we finally reached the end of this video.
Alright, so to recap from an hour and a half ago. Draft Day.
A strong recommendation.
Definite recommendation. Oculus?
Yeah. Just,
Know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah.
I liked it as well. Rio 2?
If you're a parent, you're going to get dragged to it anyway, but if you're not, it's not, no.
Yeah, it wasn't the greatest for sure. Afflicted?
It's already got a big fan base, apparently, so what I say is not really going to matter.
Joe?
Yeah.
Without any doubt, with anything
it's
today.
It's going to have to be, Joe is probably going to be the best movie of the year for most of it. It's a really, really great movie is going to have to come out this year for Joe to not be the best movie of the year. And
we've had some great movies in the last couple of months.
Yeah, and it really says something that I say that in April, so...
There's not a day goes by he doesn't call me and say, I just found the best movie of the year, and it's changed like 6 times.
The second half of this year has a lot to live up to.
Yeah, no lie. And finally, Only Lovers Left Alive. Oh!
Yeah. Like I said, it's if you're aware of Jarmusch's style, you'll be perfectly fine. Right. But if you are like a fan of vampire movies, it's not exactly like that. It has a lot of great ideas to do with the genre, but it's not a traditional vampire movie by any means.
So next week we have Transcendence, Haunted House 2, and I believe some limited releases.
Isn't there a third one?
Yeah. Heaven is for real.
Yeah.
Yeah, another faith-based movie review coming up next week.
And I will also do, there's a horror thriller thing called 13 Sins. Apparently it has Ron Perlman in it. And The Raid 2.
Alright. So,
which I'm hearing wild, crazy-ass things about.
And we haven't reviewed The Raid yet, so we're going to be probably doing a little bit of a warm-up before that starts. So, any parting words, AJ?
That's it.